The Vegas Chamber is here in Washington, D.C. at our nation's capital, and we have the Vegas Chamber's largest and most diverse fly-in ever in the history of the Vegas Chamber or business in Nevada. Our heart is in serving Nevada's business community. It's our passion. We're servant leaders. We're here for you, and we want to make sure and provide all the resources that a business needs to be successful. Hi, I'm Mary Beth Seawald with the Vegas Chamber, and Nevada is Battle Reborn. I'm Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Vegas Chamber, and we are here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. I am so proud and honored today to have with me Senator Catherine Cortez Masto. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it is always a pleasure to talk with you and be here when the Chamber's here. This is fantastic.
That's right. We have our largest contingent ever, and you just got to address them. What were some of the things that you were able to share with our group?
Yeah, it was important to know, one, that the work that we are continuing to do here in the Senate, particularly for me, is to shore up our small businesses and businesses in general that just came out of this pandemic and were so hard hit. You know, the Restaurants Act, the work that I'm doing now on our trade shows and conventions to shore them up, just make sure everybody can stay afloat. You know, we were able to pass the employee retention tax credit, but also it was about workers, you know, the workers that we asked to shelter in place, and how do we make sure they have money in their pockets? And so part of that was ensure they had coverage like through COBRA, 100% subsidy for COBRA we were able to put into some of the relief packages, and just make sure our families were taken care of and supported. That's why the direct payments, and now the child tax credit that is out there to really kind of shore up our families and their children for the future as well. One
of the things, as you know, that's going to be so important as we build back better program, and Nevada is very engaged in that. Southern Nevada particularly, we're working with the LVCVA and the LVGEA. At the Vegas Chamber, we are primarily focusing on the Good Jobs Challenge. And so when you talked earlier about upskilling and reskilling our workforce and getting those folks back to work, what do you think are some of the key components that we should be focusing on for that?
Yeah, thank you. Because first of all, let me just thank you for the work you're doing. It really is at the forefront, and I don't really see that across the country in some of the other communities as much as I've seen our community come together and really focus on how we ensure our workforce it comes with us as we kind of embrace the 21st century with this innovation economy and the jobs that are available. I think it is so important. So at a federal level, here's our goal, is to support what you're doing, is just kind of this continuing to support the workforce development of this connectivity between the skills, the training that is needed, working with the private sector to show that there's jobs there, and these are the jobs that they're looking for in the private sector, to identify that kind of skill base, and then making sure they have the jobs at the end of the day. But part of it that we're looking at it at a federal level is the resource and support for those workers so they can reskill or retrain, right? So many of our community have just been hard hit by the pandemic. Some of them are still out of jobs. They're trying to figure out how can they find a new skill or train for that. Some of them need support in the form of just direct support to keep them afloat. I think at the end of the day, my goal has been to really kind of follow your lead and what you've done with the pathways and how you kind of really brought all three together, and listening to you what you need at a federal level to support that. You know, so many people know we have federal dollars that already come in to the state of Nevada for workforce development. But if we're not flexible in how we use it and based on the needs we have in our community, which every community, as you know, is different. Southern Nevada is going to be different than Northern Nevada, different from our rural communities. We're not going to get it right. And so part of that is just making sure that we're communicating and really focused on how we connect our workers to those jobs that are available and give them the skills they need.
You know, Senator, another critically important component that the Vegas Chamber is tracking, and I know you are, is the infrastructure package. It's so important for us for I-11, I-15, broadband, and so forth. What are some of the things you're hopeful about that package?
Yeah, this is a great package for Nevada. So it's passed out of the Senate. It makes incredibly important investments across the country, but most importantly for Nevada. And you've talked about it. So $65 billion just for broadband. Why is that important? Because There are too many areas in our state, in our rural communities, and some in our urban areas are just underserved. They have no broadband, no connectivity, which means they don't have telehealth or telemedicine access to healthcare, which means they don't have access to e-learning, and don't have access to the ability to kind of learn a new skill or get a certification online for that new job or that future. And so connecting and making sure that money comes into the state for broadband is so important. And then just the investments in our infrastructure in general, our I-11, I-15 across the state, I-80, making sure we're shoring up not only our highways, but our bridges and our transit in general. And then thinking about the 21st century with the innovation, the new technology that it's going to take us in new directions that we can incorporate into our transportation to make it smart transportation, electric buses, electric vehicles, upgrade our HVAC systems in some of our older buildings. I mean, there's so much of this bipartisan infrastructure package that really leans into this also clean energy economy as well. And it's good, creates jobs in our state, and it puts us at the forefront of the innovation economy for Nevada. We're an innovation state. I love everything about it, and this is our opportunity to take advantage of the investments that are being made now that will benefit us long-term in Nevada.
Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, thank you so much for your service to our great state. We really appreciate all that you do to help each and every one of us every day.
Mary Beth, thank you.
Thank you.
This is the story of two businesses. Andy made a lemonade stand and hoped people would come. Jill did too, but she chose a team to get the word out about her lemonade stand. Jill learned early that advertising with the right team gets the best results. At Cox Media, we do this every day, helping your business grow to meet its potential. With our marketing expertise, Cox Media is your partner for advertising success. Don't let your business get left behind. Let's grow your business together. Contact Cox Media today.
I'm Mark Shear with Las Vegas Raiders. I just want to say what a pleasure it's been to not only serve on the board of the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, but to be a member. This chamber does a fantastic job of making sure our voice is heard in Carson City, our voice is heard locally. There's no quicker way to get plugged into the pipeline of Las Vegas than joining the chamber here. It's 1 degree of separation. If you're a small business looking to add a 401k, health benefits, or need help coming out of COVID-19 with marketing, with employment strategies, give a call to the Las Vegas Chamber. They can help.
Welcome back to Like Nobody's Business.
I'm Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Vegas Chamber. And this week, the Vegas Chamber is having conversations with decision makers on Capitol Hill as part of our Washington, D.C. fly-in. We are honored today to have Congressman Mark Amodei with us. He represents Nevada's 2nd Congressional District. He's done a lot to help the Vegas Chamber and the entire business community in the entire state of Nevada. Welcome, Congressman Amodei.
Thanks for the invite, Mary Beth. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you being with us and addressing our delegation on Capitol Hill. You know, you've always been a strong advocate for business across the entire state. You've worked with the Vegas Chamber on several issues of concern. What are some of your top priorities right now?
Well, I think we have to look forward in terms of COVID, something that I think as something that we need to take into account in business, in government, and everything. So we need to start transitioning into how does this become a management thing as opposed to an emergency and white knuckle stuff, and how do we do things that are reasonable for private enterprise to continue to exist in a responsible way in a COVID environment. So it affects everyone, and so that's one of the things that's near the top of our list.
There are a lot of important things happening in Washington, D.C. right now that could potentially impact Nevada. Infrastructure is a huge one, especially Interstate 11, I-15 are things that are priorities for the Vegas Chamber. You sit on the Appropriations Committee, so do you think Congress will pass the infrastructure bill?
I think an infrastructure bill will be passed. You know, it's kind of like you got to finish making that sausage. The Senate has done what they call their bipartisan one that 17 Republican senators voted for. I don't think that'll be the final word. There'll still be some tug of war, this, that, and the other sort of thing. Obviously, there's a new aspect to it, which is called, you know, the administration's calling human infrastructure. I think that'll be looked at differently. Not that it's a bad idea, but you know, quite frankly, when you start stacking the trillions up, you have to be a little bit circumspect about what the best way to do that is.
What's the bipartisanship like on the Hill right now?
Not good. And I don't mean to say that like lament and oh my goodness and the sky's falling or whatever. It's just that there's a lot of focus right now on where we don't agree on issues instead of what we can get done to agree. And so there's a whole bunch of agenda pursuit going on now as opposed to let's solve some problems.
You know as well as anybody that water tends to be a real issue for Southern Nevada.
Yeah.
I know you represent the entire state, even though you're from the north. It's no secret that Lake Mead is having issues, and as we talk about infrastructure, what are some of the conversations around infrastructure as it would relate to water in the Colorado River?
Well, quite frankly, it's interesting over the years to see desalination is something that it runs hot, it runs cold, we're thinking about it, we're not thinking about it. But quite frankly, when you look at the upper basin states and then you look at the lower basin states and you look at all those allocations, all the communities along the Colorado, upper and lower, are needing more resources. And I don't think you're going to see any of them, even though Southern Nevada Water Authority is doing a great job and has been for a long time on that. Desal is going to end up having to be something where if you want to take water away from those lower states and Mexico, then you're going to have to replace it with something, because nobody's going to say, we don't need water. The farther down you go, you're going through the Mojave Desert at the end of it. So I think desal is going to be something it's kind of warming up now. And so I think that's, as the technology and the R&D improves, that's going to be the answer to basically freeing up some of that water for the folks in Clark County.
In the past, you had told us at the Vegas Chamber that you were considering a run for governor.
Yep.
Can you bring us up to date on your intentions around that now?
Well, I said I'd decide by the end of October, and there's part of me's like, maybe I'll wait. And there's sometimes you're like, I'm gonna say something now. I'm gonna honor that. I'm gonna try to be consistent with that. I'll just tell you that, and I shared with some of your folks earlier. It's like, listen, nothing against Governor Sisolak. I respect him. He's the governor. All that stuff. But it was like seeing the ability to see a change in the Capitol and the governor's mansion is something that I think is important in terms of where we've been the last 4 years and can we do better and that sort of stuff. So when I look at all the folks that said I'm in, and no disrespect to any of those folks, it's like, hey, you need somebody, if you're going to beat a Democrat governor in a Democrat registered state who's an incumbent, that's a tall hike. And guess what? Just toss it in going, hey, I don't like what he did on this or that or whatever. In my opinion, that isn't going to get the job done. So I'm a little frustrated because it's like part of the reason I held off was like, well, let's see. And quite frankly, I haven't seen anything with all the early starts and the announcements 6 months before even signups. I don't see anybody who's like, hey, I think a bunch of people can get behind that. Now, that's still a long time in political terms too, and the primary, and a lot of people tend to forget about the primary. The primary's still, June. So we're talking 9 months away. And quite frankly, you look at the last two, Mary Beth, here's an interesting thing. Go look at the Secretary of State's site. Don't take my word for it. In the last two statewide primaries, 54% of the votes in the Republican primary were cast in Clark County. The other 46 were cast in the other 16 counties. And so, there's some people going, well, this, that, the other sort of thing. It's like, hey, guess what? Especially with a primary that big, we still like our chances because we've run in those other 16 counties for the most part, 6 times in a row, every 2 years. We've got good results. Thank you. But in this business, you're only as good as your next one. But as far as what do you think your chances are, it's like, listen, if we get in, we'll get our share of votes in Clark County. And I think we'll be the strongest candidate in the rest of the state.
So is that a yes?
No, it's not a yes yet, because on the other side of that is you're sitting here going, listen, as the only Republican left in the federal delegation, and I don't know who's going to control the House after the 22 elections, but we're pretty close to being a subcommittee chairman on appropriations. And not that I never thought I'd be here long enough to do that. But the other thing is it a good time to be breaking in a new hand on the ranch in terms of that district? Assuming that that CD2 stays R even after reapportionment, which I think it will, and that the Southern Nevada delegation stays intact. It's like, so I don't know. That's the thing. It's like, what's the best thing for the state? I'm at an age where it's like, hey, you don't need to have an election certificate to get up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror. So it's public service. It's like, well, if you're going to continue in it, what's, and so that's kind of some of the counterbalance.
Well, you're kind of leading into what I was just thinking for a next question for you. You've always been such a passionate advocate for the whole state.
Yeah.
So, and you just said you're the only Republican, in Capitol Hill representing Nevada. So where do you think your passions would make you most effective to serve the state?
Well, that's actually, thank you for crystallizing that for me. That's kind of what the thought process is. What do you think's the best thing in terms of serving the state? But I'll also give you one more. If we're going to be completely open here, is an 8-way primary isn't usually a good idea. And I'm not criticizing it. It's like, hey, it's America. If you want to run, you run. But I saw what happened when everybody thought Harry Reid was vulnerable, 15 years ago or whenever it was. And I'm not saying that's going to happen again, but you know what? Those who forget history are destined to repeat it.
That's true. Well, Congressman Amodei, thank you so much for your passionate service for Nevada. We really appreciate all you do for the Vegas Chamber and the entire business community and all of us.
Thank you and your organization too. It's first class.
Oh, well, thank you.
Remember old Vegas where the customer was king? The Casablanca in Mesquite is just like Vegas used to be. Play over 40 of your favorite table games.
Play over 800 slot and video poker machines and get comps, free play, and cash back.
Get away and play 2 18-hole championship golf courses, or pamper yourself in our full-service salon and unwind in our world-class spa. Now this is my kind of getaway. Reserve your $99 golf or spa getaway today. It's just like Vegas used to be.
My name is Kerry Buboltz. I'm the president of Vegas Golden Knights. We are proud members of the Vegas Chamber, and I'm also a proud trustee. One of the first meetings we had was with the Vegas Chamber. It was a great resource for us. We needed sales leads to go out and sell season tickets, learn about the marketplace and the community for corporate sponsorships. They were one of the best resources that we could use to understand what was really happening in our marketplace.
Welcome back to Like Nobody's Business.
I'm Mary Beth Seawald, President and CEO of the Las Vegas Chamber of Commerce, and we are here at our Washington, D.C. fly-in, our nation's capital. We're so proud to be here with Congresswoman Susie Lee. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Happy to be here. It's great to see 180 people here. It's, shows that Vegas is ready for the future.
Yes, it is our largest fly-in ever in the history of the Vegas Chamber. And to that degree, you just spoke with our delegation. What were some of their concerns or questions that they expressed?
Listen, many represent small businesses. They are really concerned about what the future holds. And obviously, we've passed many packages helping people through this pandemic. And I think it's really concerned to make sure that our businesses get back on their feet and that the economy recovers fully and completely.
Well, speaking of the economy recovering completely, especially in Nevada, where we've been hit so hard with our tourism and so forth, economic recovery clearly is one of the Chamber's largest priorities. So what resources are in the American Rescue Plan that you think might help us out in our state?
Well, listen, we have close to $6.7 billion that has come to the state, $4 billion basically in direct funding. And this is money that goes to state and local governments, not to mention all of the PPP funding and all of the financial support, the child tax credits, which goes to families, which ends up in our economy. And so I think that we have a great opportunity with this funding. A lot of it has not been spent yet. And whether we're talking about workforce development, any type of investment that we're making in education, I think is going to be so vitally important to looking at how we prepare our workforce for the jobs of the future. And then couple it with what we're about to vote on tomorrow, the infrastructure package. We have so much to look forward to in Nevada.
Well, speaking of the infrastructure package, that could be incredibly important to Nevada with I-11, I-15, high-speed rail, and the whole thing, broadband. What are some of your expectations about how that's going to turn out?
I'm confident we're going to get the infrastructure package passed. I've been working on this as part of the Problem Solvers Infrastructure Working Group. This has been something that, in Congress, as we all know, one of the other concerns that members had was the hyper-partisanship, not just in Washington, but in the country. This is a show that we can actually work together on something that is so overdue in our communities. And when you talk about I-11 and I-15, I mean, that's so important to the economic future of Nevada. So we know there is $55 billion in that Nevada is poised to see for roads and bridges investment. And so while I-11 or I-15 has not been specifically targeted in that bill, I think it's safe to say they're pretty top priorities when it comes to Nevada.
Well, we hope so, because we really, really need help with I-11 and I-15. As you know, that's something that's so important for our tourism. But you mentioned being on the Problem Solvers Caucus, and you also said that you got some questions from our delegation about partisanship and things like that. Where is there agreement among the parties? Or is there any?
Listen, I mean, I think it is, it's hopeful that 19 senators voted for the $1.2 trillion package. I know that, we've come together. There's 58 members in the Problem Solvers Caucus. And as I said, we just had a meeting this morning to talk about being unified in support of that. Because as we know, roads and bridges, investment in water treatment, these are not partisan issues. Every American needs this type of investment. And so I'm hoping that we can get this. Not hoping, I'm confident we can get this over the finish line. It's just a must-do for the American economy.
Okay, so what are some of your priorities for the coming year?
Economic diversification, workforce development. I mean, we know that, as you know, so many people fell out of the workforce during this pandemic, and it fell disproportionately on women, on communities of color. And we know that not all those jobs are going to come back. But we also know that with the Build Back Better Act, we have the potential for billions of dollars of investment in clean energy, in diversifying our economy. So I'm going to be focused on, number one, making sure those dollars make it to Nevada to support our economy, that we can get the money for the roads and the bridges we need, for the airport, but also making sure that we have a workforce that can take those jobs. And as you know, clean energy is a sector that we're just dying to we're already a leader, but this bill is so important for Nevada when it comes to that, because we have so much potential. And then also to look, we have Haas Automation, which just came into Henderson, making sure that we're trying to diversify into whether it is manufacturing, the medical industry. There's so many industries that we have an opportunity to, but to me it all goes through a lot of it goes through education and workforce development. That's what I'll be focused on.
Okay, yeah, it really does. And you mentioned the Build Back Better program, and the Vegas Chamber is leading the effort along with the LVCVA and the LVGEA. But the Vegas Chamber is focusing primarily on the Good Jobs Challenge. So you're speaking about workforce and workforce development and upskilling and reskilling. What are some of the priorities that you think we as a chamber and a business community should have when we approach how we try to apply for the grant for the Good Jobs Challenge?
Listen, I think that we need to be strategic, and we all need to work together. I mean, we have our university systems, our community college, and it's never too late to get children focused on workforce development and making sure that we're also working with K-12. And also, I think we need to come together as a community, whether it's, obviously you do an incredible job working with all of the chambers, the urban, Henderson, Boulder City, North Las Vegas. We know what happens when you work together effectively, but working also with our university system and our K-12 system, and really developing a plan on what are those sectors we want to go after, and what are the skills we need, and how are we going to build programs that are going to provide those skills, and then also making sure we're recruiting our students, the students who live here. We want to build our workforce that's here and make sure. Yep, I know.
Well, Congresswoman Susie Lee, thank you so much for your service here in Washington, D.C. Thank you for being so passionate about helping us all back home in the state of Nevada.
Thank you. Thanks for all your work. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Becky. I am the owner and operator of the Beacon Center. We're a 2,200 square foot venue space located 1.6 miles from the Las Vegas Strip. If you're looking for a venue for a workshop, seminar, class, or even a birthday party, baby shower, or wedding, we would be a good fit. To get more information on how to make our space your space, contact us at www.thebeaconcenter.com.
Welcome back to Like Nobody's Business.
Thanks for watching. I'm Mary Beth Seawald.
At it again in 110, and the fire's just starting to burn. There ain't no keeping us down in this neon town. We've been waiting for